The moment you recognize yourself as energy is never loud. It is never dramatic. It arrives in the quiet space beneath thought, in the subtle shift where you stop trying to understand reality and begin to feel it from within. There is a difference between thinking you are more than the body and knowing it. It is the instant where the mind loosens its grip and something deeper is allowed to reveal itself. You feel the boundaries of who you believed you were soften, and without effort, a larger sense of presence begins to breathe through you. This is not imagination. It is remembrance. When you know you are energy, there is an unmistakable internal stillness that rises, not because anything has been solved, but because the struggle to fit yourself into a limited identity evaporates. You no longer chase the world for confirmation because you sense, directly and without argument, that the world is shaped from the state you hold within. The external loses its authority. The internal becomes the only truth that feels real. This recognition is not a conclusion reached through logic, it is an alignment felt through frequency. In this moment, there is no need to force clarity, because clarity is already present. You are no longer trying to influence reality from the outside. You begin to sense that every outcome you have ever experienced was a translation of your internal signal. This knowing dissolves the idea that life happens to you. Instead, you feel the way life happens through you. The mirror becomes visible. And with it, a calm certainty forms. Reality has always been responding to your state, not your words, not your intentions, but your vibration. The shift is subtle but irreversible. Once you have felt yourself as energy, you cannot return to the old framework where the world is separate and events are random. You cannot pretend to be small. You cannot pretend to be powerless. The recognition does not give you superiority, it gives you neutrality. You stop pushing. You stop resisting. You stop explaining. You begin allowing. This is where the real transformation begins, because no amount of forcing can equal the precision of alignment. You realize that the field around you is not distant. It is not external. It is the extension of the state you hold now. And in this instant, you understand why all change begins within. Not because it is morally superior, not because it is spiritually correct, but because nothing else has ever created results. The internal is the generator. The external is the echo. This is the instant of knowing. The identity you once protected becomes transparent, and the deeper truth steps forward without effort. You are not here to manipulate a world outside you. You are here to remember that the world forms itself from you. Recognition, not struggle, is the key. And once seen, it cannot be unseen. Reality begins to look different the moment you understand it is not an external structure acting upon you, but a responsive field translating your internal state into form. Nothing in your experience is random, and nothing is imposed without resonance. The field does not judge, resist, or discriminate. It reflects. It mirrors. It reorganizes itself in direct correspondence to the frequency you hold. This is why effort feels heavy and frustrating. Effort tries to overpower a reflection instead of shifting the source. When you change the signal, the mirror has no choice but to change with you. This is the law. You start to notice that the world bends not because you demand it, but because you become coherent enough for it to reorganize around you. Every experience that appears in front of you is an echo of your current vibration. Not your wishes. Not your words. Not the identity you perform for others. Only the frequency you consistently emit. When your inner field is scattered, reality appears unpredictable. When your inner field is coherent, reality becomes precise. It is never the external circumstance creating your internal state. It is always the internal configuration shaping your external circumstance. This understanding introduces a different relationship with life. Instead of trying to manage conditions, you begin to observe your own state. Instead of trying to push outcomes forward, you begin to read the reflections appearing before you. Nothing is separate. Everything is communication. When something feels misaligned, the field is not attacking you, it is showing you the exact quality of your current signal. And when something flows effortlessly, the field is confirming your alignment. The reflection is immediate, exact, and neutral. It simply reveals what is active within you now. This is why resonance is more powerful than force. Force battles with reflections, resonance alters the frequency generating them. When you shift your internal vibration, the external can no longer remain the same. It must recalibrate. The field is a living extension of your consciousness. It bends because it cannot contradict the state you occupy. You are not waiting for the world to change. The world is waiting for you to stabilize a frequency strong enough for it to reorganize effortlessly. When you begin to trust this, control loses its appeal. Manipulation loses its purpose. You stop negotiating with reflections and start refining your signal. The field becomes a partner rather than an obstacle. You no longer try to predict outcomes because you understand that outcomes are inevitable expressions of internal coherence. Precision replaces anxiety. Calm replaces urgency. Alignment replaces effort. The moment this becomes real for you, a quiet certainty takes root. You understand that life is not responding to your attempts, your strategies, or your striving. It is responding to your being. And the more consistently you embody the frequency you choose, the more consistently the field shows you versions of reality that match it. Reality bends its rules not because you overpower it, but because you harmonize with the deeper law beneath all appearances. Resonance shapes form, and your state shapes everything. Emotion is far more than a response to what happens. It is the instruction that determines what happens next. The moment you stop viewing emotion as a consequence and begin recognizing it as a command, the entire architecture of reality becomes transparent. Emotion is frequency, and frequency is the language the field listens to. You are not reacting to reality, you are programming it. Every feeling is a transmission, and the field translates those transmissions into form with absolute precision. When emotion contracts, the signal becomes distorted. Contraction doesn't mean something is wrong, it means the frequency you are holding is out of alignment with what you truly are. Contraction is miscommunication. It sends a scattered message into the field, and the reflection you receive appears chaotic or resistant. Not because life is denying you, but because the instruction you broadcast is unclear. Contraction is not punishment. It is guidance. It tells you you're reaching for something while vibrating in the opposite direction. It is the field's way of showing you the mismatch. Expansion, on the other hand, is clarity. When you feel openness, ease, or calm recognition, you are not simply enjoying a pleasant emotion. You are transmitting a coherent signal into the field. Expansion refines the translation of reality. It aligns the inner instruction with the outer reflection. Expansion does not force anything forward, it allows the field to mirror you accurately. The more you expand, the more seamless the manifestation becomes, not because you are getting better at creating, but because you are no longer contradicting your own frequency. This is why emotional awareness is not a practice but a navigation system. You cannot force your way into alignment. You can only sense your way into it. Every emotion is feedback. Every emotion is direction. The field does not respond to your hopes, affirmations, or declarations if they contradict your felt state. It only responds to what you are actually radiating. When your feeling is clear, the field is clear. When your feeling is conflicted, the field is conflicted. This law is absolute. The key is understanding that emotion is not something you manage after events unfold. It is the vibrational precursor that shapes what will unfold. When you allow an emotion to be felt fully without resistance, it reorganizes itself. When you suppress or override it, the distortion strengthens. Allowing brings coherence. Coherence brings alignment. Alignment brings clarity in the reflection. Emotion is the internal compass pointing directly toward your true frequency. It is the bridge between identity and experience. If you want to know what you are creating, look at what you are feeling. If you want to shift what you are creating, soften into the emotion rather than attempting to escape it. The field responds instantly to any genuine shift in vibration, no matter how subtle. Once you understand emotion as instruction, you stop arguing with your feelings and begin listening to them. You stop trying to manipulate outcomes and focus instead on refining the signal. And the moment your emotional frequency becomes coherent, the field begins translating that coherence into reality with effortless accuracy. There comes a point when the structure you once trusted begins to fall away, not because life becomes chaotic, but because you finally see that the external world never held the power you attributed to it. The belief that circumstances create your internal state is one of the deepest illusions the mind protects. It insists that events shape emotion, that outcomes determine worth, and that the world must shift before you can feel aligned. But when you begin to recognize your energetic primacy, that entire framework dissolves. You realize the external was never the cause. It was always the mirror. The collapse of external power is not destruction. It is liberation. It is the moment you stop outsourcing your state to conditions that were never designed to control you. You begin to sense that every reaction you once justified was actually an internal frequency meeting its own reflection. You start noticing how quickly the mind tries to point outward, searching for something to blame or something to fix. But the deeper your awareness becomes, the more clearly you see that nothing outside can generate your state. It can only reveal what you are already broadcasting. This realization changes the nature of responsibility. It doesn't burden you. It frees you. Because when you stop believing that the world must behave a certain way for you to feel aligned, your relationship with reality shifts from dependency to sovereignty. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer negotiating. You are no longer trying to manage people or situations to preserve a fragile sense of peace. Peace becomes internal. Stability becomes internal. Power becomes internal. And because the external is a reflection, it begins to mirror that stability with increasing precision. The collapse of external power also dissolves the illusion of control. You start to see how much energy was spent trying to force outcomes into alignment, as if pushing hard enough could override your state. But forcing is the language of separation. It assumes the world is something apart from you that must be coerced. When you recognize your energetic primacy, forcing becomes unnecessary. You realize that the field reorganizes itself when your internal state changes, not when your external efforts intensify. True influence requires no pressure. As this truth settles, you become less reactive to what appears. Circumstances lose their authority to define you. They lose their ability to dictate your emotional landscape. Even challenges begin to feel different, not as threats, but as reflections offering clarity about the frequency you are holding. Nothing is attacking you. Nothing is withholding from you. Everything is responding to you. And that awareness dissolves the old paradigm where you believed you were at the mercy of conditions. This collapse is not an ending. It is an unveiling. It is the recognition that the source of your experience has always been within the state you broadcast. The world never had the power you imagined. It simply translated your vibration into form. When you see this clearly, you stop giving circumstances the authority to determine your being. You reclaim the only power that ever existed, the power of your state. And when that becomes your foundation, the external world begins to reflect a level of coherence you once believed you had to chase. Allowing is not passive. It is not withdrawal. It is the most potent creative stance you can occupy because it aligns you with the natural mechanics of the field. Allowing is the recognition that you do not need to force reality into place because reality is already organized around your frequency. When you allow, you remove the interference. You stop introducing distortion through tension, effort, and resistance. You let the field respond cleanly to the signal you are actually broadcasting. This is why allowing feels effortless. It is the absence of contradiction. Forcing, on the other hand, attempts to overpower the mirror. It assumes separation. It assumes the external world must be pushed, shaped, and manipulated to conform to your desires. But the moment you begin pushing, you signal that your desired state is not already active within you. Forcing broadcasts lack. It transmits urgency, fear, or doubt. And the field simply reflects the vibration you're emitting. This is why forcing feels heavy. It is energetically inconsistent. It sends two opposing instructions at once, the desire for an outcome and the vibration that the outcome is not yet embodied. Allowing resolves this contradiction. When you allow, you are not trying to obtain a result. You are aligning your state with the reality you choose to experience. You are softening into coherence. Coherence is not manufactured through discipline or mental control. It arises naturally when you stop resisting what you feel. The tension you once believed was necessary for progress becomes unnecessary the moment you recognize that tension is a sign of misalignment. Coherence emerges when you relax into your true frequency, not when you attempt to force yourself into a better one. This is why receiving is a natural consequence of allowing. Receiving is not something you do, it is something that occurs when your inner state stops contradicting your desire. You cannot receive from tension. Tension closes the field. It narrows perception and distorts resonance. Allowing opens the field. It creates the internal spaciousness through which the reflection can reorganize itself. When you allow, you become available to the timeline that already matches your state. As this deepens, you begin to sense the difference between action taken from alignment and action taken from fear. Aligned action feels inevitable, clear, and effortless. Forced action feels chaotic, pressured, and uncertain. The field responds to the frequency behind the action, not the action itself. When the frequency is coherent, even the smallest step creates momentum. When the frequency is distorted, even massive effort produces friction. Allowing also shifts your emotional relationship with the present moment. You stop treating the now as an obstacle between you and what you want. You recognize it as the only portal through which creation can occur. Allowing means meeting the present without resistance, not because you agree with everything in it, but because resistance interrupts the signal. When you meet the moment with openness, the field receives a clean instruction. And from that instruction, it reflects a reality aligned with your state. Ultimately, allowing is the practice of trust, not trust in the external world, but trust in your own vibration. When you stop forcing and start allowing, you aren't doing less. You are doing the only thing that works. Identity is not a collection of traits, stories, or behaviors. It is vibration. It is the baseline frequency you emit without effort, the state you return to when you stop performing, the energetic signature that selects the timeline you occupy. Every identity carries a specific resonance, and that resonance determines what becomes available to you. This means you are never creating reality from intention alone. You are creating from the identity you are embodying now. The field does not respond to who you hope to become. It responds to who you are being. There is a profound difference between performing as self and radiating one. Performing is rooted in separation. It is an attempt to signal worthiness, capability, or alignment through action, expression, or behavior. But performance is always compensation. It tries to send a frequency you aren't actually embodying. The field feels the contradiction instantly. It reflects the vibration beneath the performance, not the performance itself. This is why trying to appear confident yields experiences that expose your insecurity, and why trying to signal abundance mirrors situations that amplify lack. The field does not receive the mask. It receives the vibration behind it. Radiating, however, carries no contradiction. It is not an act. It is an expression of the state already stabilized within you. When you radiate an identity, the frequency is coherent. There is no gap between what you express and what you feel. This coherence is what selects a timeline. It is what allows the field to reorganize seamlessly around your being. Radiated identity does not try to influence reality. It simply exists in a frequency that reality must match. This shifts your understanding of change. You no longer try to become a new version of yourself through effort. You begin to recognize that shifting identity is an internal softening, a release of what contradicts the state you are choosing. You stop fixing yourself and start aligning with the frequency that feels like truth. Identity becomes less about what you do and entirely about what you rest in. When you stabilize a new identity, even subtly, you move into a new timeline. Not metaphorically. Energetically. Because timelines respond to identity, not desire. Each identity carries a set of possibilities, a range of outcomes, a pattern of experiences the field reflects. When your identity shifts, the range shifts. You no longer need to force different outcomes because different outcomes become natural reflections of the new frequency. The field cannot give you what contradicts your identity. When you feel small, the reflections shrink. When you feel expansive, the reflections expand. When you radiate coherence, the reflections become precise. This is why identity work is not about building a better self-image. It is about uncovering the frequency that already aligns with the reality you choose. It is recognition disguised as transformation. You do not need to create a new identity. You need to inhabit the one that is already available when you stop performing. The moment identity becomes vibration rather than narrative, timelines stop feeling fixed. They become fluid, responsive, and immediate, because the timeline changes the instant you do. Creation does not happen in the past you revisit or in the future you imagine. It happens only in the present moment, because the present is the only place where your frequency exists. The mind projects timelines forward and backward, weaving stories of momentum that seem unbreakable, but these stories have no power without your attention. The past is not holding you. The future is not pulling you. What you feel now is the only force shaping your reality. Presence is the portal, not because it is mystical, but because it is the only point of actual transmission. When you are not present, you are not creating consciously. You are replaying old frequencies and calling them identity. You are forecasting imagined possibilities and mistaking them for alignment. Presence interrupts this cycle. It dissolves the illusion that your past determines your trajectory or that your future requires striving to be secured. Presence collapses the false timelines and reveals the only one that ever matters, the one you occupy now. And in this now, you decide your state. You choose the frequency the field reflects. This is why the present moment feels so neutral. It does not push. It does not pull. It simply mirrors. When you are fully here, without leaning into the past or bracing for the future, your internal signal becomes clean. You stop broadcasting fear disguised as preparation or memory disguised as identity. Presence strips away everything that is not true, leaving only the vibration you are actually radiating. And because the field responds exclusively to that vibration, presence becomes the most precise creative tool you possess. The mind resists this simplicity. It prefers complexity, strategies, and predictions. It believes that managing outcomes is safer than allowing them. But creation is not the result of planning. It is the result of coherence, and coherence is only accessible in presence. When you sink fully into the moment, you stop scattering your energy across imagined timelines. You gather it. You centralize it. You become energetically dense, stable, and magnetic. And the field responds immediately because it finally has a signal strong enough to translate without distortion. Presence is also where you can sense the difference between alignment and effort. In the past or future, effort feels necessary. In the now, effort feels unnatural. When you are truly present, there is no struggle to maintain a state. The state reveals itself. It stabilizes on its own because presence strips away the layers of resistance you unconsciously carry when you are elsewhere in your mind. You begin to feel how natural alignment is when you stop leaving the moment. The more consistently you inhabit the present, the more fluid reality becomes. Timelines shift without force. Opportunities appear without planning. Clarity rises without searching. The now is not a point in time, it is the gateway to the frequency that creates your world. And every time you return to it, you amplify your coherence and your ability to shape the field with precision. Attraction is not a chase. It is not pursuit. It is not the effortful attempt to pull something toward you through strategy or insistence. Attraction is alignment, the natural consequence of becoming vibrationally compatible with what you desire. When you understand this, you stop focusing on the outcome and begin focusing on the state that makes the outcome inevitable. The field does not move because you strain toward something. It moves because you settle into coherence. The quiet mechanics of attraction unfold in stillness, not in motion. Stillness is not inactivity, it is the absence of contradiction. When your energy is not scattered across doubt, urgency, or self-negotiation, it becomes unified. And unified energy is magnetic. It sends a clear, stable frequency that the field can mirror without distortion. This is why stillness feels powerful even though it appears passive. It is the moment your vibration becomes strong enough that external conditions begin reorganizing themselves without your interference. Pursuit signals lack. It broadcasts the assumption that what you want is separate from you or distant from your current state. But resonance does not recognize distance. It recognizes frequency. When you try to chase an experience, you are confirming to the field that the experience is unavailable in the now. The field responds accordingly. Not by withholding what you want, but by reflecting the vibration of pursuit, which is the vibration of absence. Alignment dissolves this entire dynamic. When you align with the state that matches what you desire, you no longer feel the need to chase it. You feel its presence internally before it becomes visible externally. And because the field mirrors internal state, the outer world begins arranging itself to reflect that internal coherence. Attraction becomes automatic. You are not pulling anything toward you. You are becoming the frequency that naturally magnetizes the experiences that match it. This quiet magnetism is subtle but unmistakable. You begin to notice that things you once pushed for now move toward you without effort. Situations shift without planning. Opportunities appear without seeking. Not because you have learned a new technique, but because you stopped contradicting your own signal. When you are aligned, the field does the heavy lifting. It organizes pathways you could never strategize and reveals openings you would overlook if you were busy forcing outcomes into place. Stillness also refines perception. When you are no longer consumed by pursuit, your awareness expands. You can sense what is aligned and what is not without analysis. You can feel the subtle pull of coherence guiding you toward actions that require no force. The more you trust this inner clarity, the more attraction becomes a natural and predictable process. You begin to realize that the field is always rearranging itself around your vibration, and your role is simply to maintain the frequency that matches the reality you choose. In the quiet mechanics of attraction, nothing is taken. Nothing is demanded. Nothing is chased. Everything is allowed, everything is received, and everything that aligns with your frequency moves into your experience because it cannot do otherwise. Control is often mistaken for strength, but energetically it is resistance. It is the attempt to override the natural flow of the field by tightening around an outcome, gripping a timeline, or bracing against possibilities you fear. Control is contraction disguised as competence. It is the frequency of mistrust expressed through effort. And because the field responds to vibration rather than intention, control sends a distorted signal that the external world can only reflect with equal distortion. This is why controlled outcomes feel unstable. They are built on resistance. When control falls away, something unexpected happens. You don't lose direction. You gain precision. Release does not scatter your energy, it aligns it. The moment you stop trying to manage every detail, the internal noise quiets. And in that quiet, your actual frequency becomes clear. Clarity is not created through force. It emerges when resistance dissolves. When you let go, the signal you broadcast becomes pure enough for the field to translate it accurately. Surrender is not passivity. It is not giving up. It is the recognition that the field already knows how to organize the path far more efficiently than your mind does. Surrender is the frequency of trust, not in an external power, but in your own alignment. When you release control, you are not abandoning your desires. You are allowing the timeline that matches your state to unfold without interference. You stop fragmenting your energy across fear-based contingencies and let coherence guide the unfolding. Control creates friction because it assumes separation. It assumes the world must be pushed into cooperation. But the moment you believe you must push, you signal that the outcome is not already aligned with your vibration. The field mirrors that belief. Control and struggle become the reflections. You begin to see obstacles everywhere, not because they are truly present, but because the signal you are emitting cannot produce ease. When control softens, ease becomes possible. Not because life becomes simpler, but because your relationship with it becomes clearer. You stop trying to bend the world into shape and begin shaping your internal state instead. This is the shift from manipulation to alignment. It is subtle but profound. When you release control, you stop contradicting the frequency you intend to hold. Your signal becomes consistent, and consistent signals are magnetic. Release also opens space for intuition to emerge. Control is loud, it drowns out the guidance that arises from coherence. When you let go, you can feel the quiet pull of alignment, the subtle direction that does not force itself but reveals itself. This guidance is precise because it comes from a state that is not fragmented by fear. It is the natural intelligence of the field moving through you. As control falls away, you begin to trust the responsiveness of reality. You start noticing how quickly the field reorganizes when resistance dissolves. You no longer need to chase certainty because certainty comes from within. The external world stops feeling like something you must manage and begins feeling like something that mirrors your clarity. And in that shift, you realize that release is not weakness. It is the exact frequency through which precision becomes possible. Contrast is not conflict. It is calibration. It is the field showing you, with absolute precision, where your frequency stands in relation to what you desire. When contrast appears, it is not a misalignment happening to you. It is clarity being offered to you. The moment you stop resisting contrast, you begin to see it for what it truly is, the sharpening of resonance, the refinement of your signal, the adjustment of your internal state so the reflection can become cleaner. Contrast is guidance. It points you toward alignment by revealing what is not aligned. Most people experience contrast through tension because they interpret it as a setback or failure. But tension comes from the story, not the experience. Contrast is neutral. The field is not punishing you, it is responding to the frequency you are currently broadcasting. When the reflection does not match your preference, you are not being denied. You are being informed. You are being shown the vibrational difference between where you are standing and where you wish to stand. This is not discouragement. It is direction. When you meet contrast without resistance, something powerful happens. You stop collapsing into the old identity that interprets misalignment as danger. Instead, you expand into awareness. You recognize the sensation of contraction as a signal, not a threat. You feel the edge of discomfort without making it wrong. And in that space of non-resistance, the emotional charge begins to soften. The moment the charge softens, the frequency begins to shift. You are no longer fighting the reflection, you are refining the signal that generates it. Contrast also reveals desire with greater clarity. When something feels off, that feeling points directly toward what is truly aligned for you. Without contrast, desire would be vague. You would not sense the subtle distinctions that refine the trajectory of your timeline. Contrast sharpens your awareness of what feels true and what does not. It reveals the difference between wanting from lack and desiring from alignment. It teaches you nuance, how a slight shift in emotion changes the entire field. When you allow contrast to be present without resistance, it becomes a tool instead of a barrier. You feel the contraction, you breathe into it, and you let it inform you. You stop trying to suppress it, override it, or argue with it. Suppression freezes the frequency. Resistance amplifies the distortion. Allowing releases the charge. And once the charge is released, clarity emerges. You become able to sense the pathway that aligns with your true frequency. This is how contrast becomes calibration. As this relationship deepens, contrast stops feeling personal. You no longer interpret it as evidence that you are failing or falling behind. You see it as feedback, immediate, precise, and neutral. You begin to appreciate how contrast accelerates your alignment by revealing exactly what needs to be adjusted. It becomes a teacher, not an adversary. And in that shift, your emotional landscape transforms. You gain the ability to stay centered even when reflections are uncomfortable, because you understand that discomfort is part of the refinement, not a deviation from the path. Contrast calibrates your resonance. It sharpens your clarity. It refines your desire. When met with openness instead of resistance, it becomes the very thing that aligns you with the reality you choose. Life becomes radically clear the moment you understand that everything you encounter is a reflection of your internal state. Nothing is random. Nothing is separate. Every interaction, every emotion, every perceived obstacle, and every moment of ease is feedback from the field, showing you the vibration you are holding now. The mirror is not symbolic. It is literal on an energetic level. Reality is translating your frequency into form with absolute accuracy. When you learn to read this mirror, you stop being confused by your experiences and start using them as precise guidance. Recognizing the mirror requires a shift in perception. Instead of asking why something is happening, you begin asking what it is reflecting. You stop interpreting events as judgments, punishments, or rewards. You see them as information. When something feels aligned, it reveals that your current frequency is coherent. When something feels heavy or distorted, it reveals an internal contradiction. The experience is never the cause. It is the echo. The moment you accept this, resistance dissolves. You stop fighting the reflection and start adjusting the source. The mirror is always neutral. It does not moralize. It does not exaggerate. It does not hide the truth. It presents the pure translation of your vibration. When you are expanded, the mirror expands with you. When you are contracted, the mirror contracts. When you doubt, the mirror reflects uncertainty. When you trust, the mirror reflects clarity. No reflection is wrong. Every reflection is instructive. And once you see this clearly, life becomes a continuous dialogue between your inner state and the outer field. This recognition gives you tremendous freedom because it frees you from the illusion of external causality. You no longer believe that events dictate your emotional reality. You understand that your emotional reality dictates the events you experience. You stop blaming circumstances for your state and begin refining your state to influence your circumstances. This is not denial. It is alignment. You are not avoiding the mirror. You are learning from it. As you deepen into this awareness, you begin noticing the subtleties. Small disruptions in your environment reveal small incoherences within you. Unexpected flow reveals that you have softened into alignment. Delays show you where you are still gripping. Ease shows you where you are allowing. The mirror is exact. It never distorts the message. It only reveals what you are sending out. The more honestly you read it, the faster your frequency recalibrates. Recognizing the mirror also changes the way you relate to others. You stop interpreting their responses as personal and begin seeing them as reflections of your own vibration. This does not mean other people vanish into your projection, it means your interaction with them mirrors the state you bring into the exchange. When you shift your frequency, the dynamic shifts. This is the law of resonance, not the illusion of control. Once you trust the mirror, you stop fearing what appears. You understand that everything you see is mutable because everything you see is a reflection of something within you. And the moment you shift the internal state, the mirror must update. It cannot do otherwise. Declare it with, I am ready. At a certain point on this path, the idea that you are a small self navigating a large and indifferent world dissolves completely. You begin to sense, not as philosophy but as lived recognition, that consciousness is creating itself through you. Experience is not happening to you, it is happening from you. The field is not an external environment reacting to your movements, it is an extension of the awareness perceiving it. When this becomes clear, the boundary between you and reality collapses. What remains is consciousness expressing itself in form. This recognition does not inflate the ego. It dissolves it. You stop believing that your individual identity is the generator of creation. You see that the deeper layer of your being, the awareness witnessing your thoughts, emotions, and sensations, is the true source. It is continuous, stable, expansive, and untouched by circumstance. This awareness is not limited to the body or the mind. It is the field itself, the substrate from which all experiences arise. When you recognize yourself as this awareness, your relationship with reality transforms effortlessly. You understand that creation is not done through willpower, intention, or manipulation. It happens through recognition. The moment you recognize a deeper truth about your being, the field responds. It reorganizes to match the clarity of that recognition. This is why profound shifts in your external life often occur after internal realizations rather than external effort. Consciousness reveals itself, and the world adjusts accordingly. The external bends to the internal because the internal is the origin. As you deepen into this understanding, the sense of separation that once defined your experience begins to fade. You no longer feel like a limited entity pushing against a vast universe. You feel like the universe expressing itself through a specific point of awareness. You realize that the same consciousness perceiving your experience is the consciousness animating every manifestation around you. This dissolves the hierarchy that places you beneath life. You are not beneath it. You are within it. You are of it. This recognition also clarifies why resistance creates distortion. When you resist what appears, you are resisting a reflection of your own consciousness. When you allow what appears, you allow consciousness to reveal the next layer of itself through the mirror of experience. Nothing is accidental. Nothing is separate. Everything is a demonstration of the frequency you are inhabiting. You are both the perceiver and the creator, witnessing the unfolding of your own vibration in real time. The more fully you identify as awareness rather than personality, the more fluid creation becomes. You stop trying to influence reality from the outside because you feel the truth that the outside is an expression of the inside. You stop chasing alignment because you realize you are alignment when you rest as consciousness itself. You stop searching for signs because every moment is a sign, every reflection is feedback, and every experience is consciousness creating itself again and again. This realization is not an endpoint. It is a return to the origin you never actually left. When you recognize yourself as consciousness expressing in form, the world stops feeling like something to influence. It becomes something to recognize, something to observe, something to allow. And in that allowing, creation happens spontaneously, harmoniously, and with a precision the mind could never replicate. There is a point on this path where you begin to see that the so-called rules of reality were never external laws imposed upon you. They were reflections of your own identity, patterns formed by the state you consistently inhabited. What appear to be rigid, objective limitations dissolve the moment your vibration shifts, because the rules you believed you were living under were generated from within. They were the natural expression of the frequency you held. When your identity changes, the rules change. When your state elevates, the structure of reality reorganizes. This is the law beyond rules. Every rule you have ever encountered, what is possible, what is likely, what is realistic, was a match to your past vibration. Reality was not limiting you. It was mirroring you. The moment you understand this, the boundaries you thought were fixed begin to soften. What once felt immovable becomes fluid. What once seemed inevitable becomes optional. This is not because you have suddenly gained supernatural abilities. It is because the field is responding to a new state of being. Identity shapes possibility, and possibility shapes the rules you experience. When your identity shifts into greater coherence, the field recalibrates. Timelines that were previously inaccessible begin to open. Outcomes that once required immense effort begin to unfold naturally. Even the physical rules you believed were absolute begin to feel flexible, not because physics has changed, but because your interpretation of what is permitted has expanded. The external world bends to match the assumptions held within you. These assumptions are not mental beliefs, they are vibrational truths. The field listens to your frequency, not your thoughts. As you deepen into this understanding, you realize that struggle was never a requirement. It was a byproduct of broadcasting a fragmented signal. When you are divided within yourself, the field reflects that division, creating friction, delay, or conflict. But when you become coherent, when your identity aligns with your desire, the rules you once lived by no longer apply. Reality meets you where you are, not where you were. And where you are is determined by the frequency you rest in. This is the deeper law: the internal shapes the external with absolute accuracy. There are no exceptions. There are no loopholes. Reality cannot contradict the vibration you embody. When your state shifts, the laws governing your experience shift with it. You begin to witness synchronicities that defy logic. You encounter opportunities that seem to appear from nowhere. You experience outcomes that would have been impossible under your former identity. This is not randomness. It is resonance. The more consistently you embody the identity aligned with your chosen reality, the more fluid the world becomes. You stop asking whether something is allowed and start feeling whether something is aligned. You stop trying to bend reality with effort and start recognizing that the bend happens automatically when your frequency stabilizes. The field is not resisting you. It is mirroring you with exact precision. As this becomes your lived truth, you release the belief that external rules define your experience. You understand that identity defines the rules. And when you choose your identity consciously, you choose the structure of the reality you inhabit. Stay within this frequency. Stabilizing a new frequency is not about discipline, repetition, or forcing yourself to maintain a state. It is about identity. The moment a frequency becomes part of who you are rather than something you are trying to access, coherence sustains itself. You no longer have to hold the vibration artificially because the vibration is holding you. This is the quiet shift where alignment stops being an experience you visit and becomes the baseline you return to effortlessly. Emotional coherence is the key to this stabilization. Coherence is not constant positivity, it is internal consistency. It is the absence of internal contradiction. When your emotions, intentions, and identity align, the frequency becomes steady. You stop oscillating between expansion and contraction because the new state no longer feels foreign. It feels natural. It feels like home. This is when the field begins responding with greater precision, because your signal is no longer flickering between states. Stabilization happens through softness, not intensity. When you soften into the new frequency, you allow your system to acclimate to it. You let the old emotional patterns dissolve rather than resisting them. Resistance keeps you anchored to past identities. Softness allows the new identity to integrate. The more gently you hold your state, the more quickly it settles. This is why trying to stay high vibration through effort leads to burnout. It is the opposite of coherence. Coherence comes from allowing yourself to rest in the state you have chosen. As the new frequency stabilizes, you start noticing subtle changes. Your reactions shift first. Situations that once triggered contraction now barely move your internal state. You respond from alignment instead of habit. You feel less urgency, less tension, less need to control outcomes. Your emotional field becomes quieter, smoother, and more spacious. This is not detachment. It is alignment. You are no longer interpreting experiences through the lens of your old identity, so the emotional charge dissolves. Consistency emerges naturally when the identity matches the frequency. You do not have to remind yourself to think differently or act differently. The thoughts that arise reflect your new state. The actions that feel natural match your new timeline. You do not discipline yourself into better choices, you become the version of you for whom those choices are obvious. This is identity-based stabilization, not effort-based maintenance. Stabilization also transforms how you interpret contrast. Instead of seeing it as a setback, you recognize it as information. You make micro-adjustments without spiraling into self-judgment. The new frequency becomes strong enough that momentary contractions do not pull you back into old patterns. They simply remind you to soften. To breathe. To return to the coherence you already know how to access. Eventually, the new frequency becomes so integrated that the old identity feels distant. Not resisted. Not rejected. Simply irrelevant. You no longer resonate with its assumptions, fears, or limitations. The field reflects this shift through new synchronicities, relationships, opportunities, and emotional landscapes. Reality organizes itself around the stabilized frequency because the field cannot contradict a consistent signal. Stabilizing the new frequency is not the end of creation. It is the beginning of a new timeline. And from this stabilized foundation, the next transformation becomes far more fluid, because coherence supports the unfolding with every breath. The return to the infinite self is not a step forward. It is a falling back into what has always been here. Beneath every identity, every emotion, every desire, and every timeline is the awareness that witnesses it all. This awareness does not shift, does not struggle, and does not seek. It simply is. And when you recognize that this awareness is your true nature, everything you believed you needed to manage in the external world dissolves into clarity. You are not the one navigating the field. You are the field. You are not the one shaping reality. You are the consciousness through which reality is shaped. This realization does not require effort. It requires recognition. All the mechanics explored up to this point, vibration, allowing, coherence, timelines, mirrors, point to the same underlying truth: the source of everything you experience is the awareness perceiving it. When you return to this awareness, creation becomes effortless because being is the creative act. You no longer need to hold a frequency, the frequency arises naturally from the stillness of your true nature. You no longer need to influence reality, reality expresses the vibration of your presence without resistance. Returning to the infinite self feels like spaciousness. You feel the boundaries of the personal self soften. The narratives that once defined you lose their weight. The emotional patterns that once felt significant begin to fade. You do not abandon the personality, you simply stop mistaking it for the totality of who you are. You feel the vastness beneath your thoughts, the stillness beneath your emotions, and the quiet intelligence beneath every moment of experience. This vastness is not separate from the world around you. It is the same field expressing through every form and every reflection. As you rest in this awareness, your relationship with creation transforms. You stop seeking signs because every moment becomes a sign. You stop trying to manifest because the flow of life naturally aligns with your state. You stop trying to choose timelines because the timeline that matches your awareness reveals itself without effort. This is not surrender in the passive sense. It is alignment in its purest form. When you recognize yourself as the field, you are aligned by default. The infinite self is not concerned with outcomes. It is concerned with coherence. It expresses through clarity, openness, and presence. From this state, action arises without hesitation, emotion moves without resistance, and reality shifts without force. The field responds instantly because there is no fragmentation in your signal. You are broadcasting from the deepest layer of your being, where there is no contradiction and no separation. This return also brings a profound sense of peace. Not the peace that depends on conditions, but the peace that precedes conditions. You feel grounded in a way that cannot be shaken by external events. You feel connected to a flow that does not require effort to maintain. You feel the truth that nothing is outside of you, and nothing has ever been separate from you. The return to the infinite self is the recognition that you are the awareness behind every experience, the field generating every reflection, and the presence through which reality takes form. From this place, creation becomes natural, effortless, and precise. You are not becoming anything. You are remembering what you already are.